All right, good evening, Hampstead. Tonight is December 14th, and we're calling to order the Hampstead School Board meeting. It is approximately 7:01 p.m. Melissa, would you mind taking the roll call?
Yes. Jason Giard.
Here.
Caitlin Parnell.
Here.
David Smith.
Here.
Megan Malcolm.
Here.
Erin Pellegrini.
Here.
And also seated at the board table is Superintendent of Schools Bob Thompson and CFO Jeff Dowd.
All right, if everybody would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, board members, in the packet here, you'll see meeting minutes, two sets, one from the November 23rd regular meeting and the other set from the November 23rd non-public meeting. Take a moment to read over, and I'll be looking for a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion to approve both the public and non-public meeting minutes for November 23rd.
Second.
Any comments, discussion? All right, all approved? Unanimous? Thank you. And Melissa, any public comments?
No, there are no public comments tonight.
Thank you. All right, first agenda item on the here under school highlights with Principal Cheney. Dr. Cheney.
Hello. All right. Well, thank you for having me here tonight. There's a lot of exciting things happening over at the Central School right now. One thing I'd love to highlight for you is a collaboration between our preschoolers and the middle schoolers actually here at the middle school. Mr. Remillard and his industrial arts students made some wooden ornaments for our preschoolers who are learning about shapes and colors. They've now designed them and painted them, and they get to take them home. But one of the sweet things was the middle schoolers wrote cute little notes to their preschool buddies, and they're looking forward to more opportunities to collaborate. Additionally, our third graders have wrapped up their Native American unit. This is a staple of our third grade social studies curriculum. One of the great parts about it is the students are divided into various regions to learn about the various Native American groups. And it really does integrate literacy. They have different texts that they read, social studies, art, and their presentation skills. So it was nice to have that back in person this year. The students and staff really appreciated that. I'd like to say thank you to our teachers and staff in the 60s wing who were affected by our 60s wing relocation. The classroom HVAC systems are installed and students are back to their learning spaces. That includes our art room, which was disrupted during this time. Art is back in the regular space, as is Ventures, and our third grade and kindergarten students are back at their learning. Finally, tonight I wanted to update you on our technology program. Our staff has been working on getting folks ready for those remote learning days. Mrs. Crovey has been focusing on Zoom skills and etiquette, digital citizenship skills, and how to use those staples of our technology such as Google Classroom, Seesaw, and Clever. Additionally, students are working on keyboarding skills, how to navigate multiple digital classrooms, and how to organize their Google Drives, which is a skill that many folks can learn. So it's been a very successful end of our first quarter, beginning of our second quarter, and we're looking forward to a good winter. Do you have any questions for me this evening?
Just thank you to the teachers who were a bit disrupted, and the students, of course. So thank you for being flexible for, getting the 60s wing done. It's a job well done. Glad we were able to do it.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to current business. First one is with Principal Denola, if you wouldn't mind, on the District Safety Committee meeting.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to report out on our Hsdsb School District Safety Committee. This year, we met for our first time on November 18th in the library. And just to review, the members of this committee are representative of the Hempstead Fire Department, Hempstead Police Department, Student Services, School Nurse, Facilities, SAU, School Board, and School Administration. The objective of our committee is to actively involve these pertinent members in actively monitoring and improving the safety of our schools. This committee will be meeting in January, March, and May of 2022. The committee has recommended that an updated physical safety assessment be scheduled in the near future by Homeland Security at both of our schools. This is a voluntary and free assessment program that identifies our physical security capabilities and makes recommendations to school leadership as warranted. Some of the recommendations can be implemented at no cost and others that require funding. The most recent assessment was held in 2016-2017 at both schools. I've contacted Homeland Security to schedule a visit that we look forward to. And minutes of our meeting have been shared with members of the committee. Should you wish more detail, I'd be happy to share them with you in a private session. Any questions with regards to our work?
Thank you all very much.
And if you have any concerns, please. Would you indulge me in a moment? I just want to say that there are people in the world that say they're going to do a lot of things, and there are people that do a lot of things. And and you're going to hate me for this, Mr. Thompson, but I know you hate it when I give you a praise and positive stuff, but this man of integrity has just helped us out so much. With coverage lately, it's been very difficult. Four positions tomorrow, no coverage. So we're scrambling every day. Mr. Thompson shows up, he teaches classes, he does recess duty, he checks in with administration, with or without our tiers, and takes care of things for us. Last week, he went with the 7th graders to the Palace Theater to A Christmas Carol. This man has so much work to do, but he's helping out. He's with our 7th graders. It's their first field trip ever in the middle school, and he was part of that. Then the kids get to know him. Can you come to my basketball game? Where was he yesterday? At the basketball game. The support and the time and the care that he has given our district just in the short time that we have known him, I can't tell you how supported the administrators are, the teachers are, the visits to the classroom, the notes to teachers, the pedagogical conversations in the hallway. I just want to say thank you, and it's been a difficult and a challenging time, but a wonderful time, and a lot of that is because of you, and I thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you. Team effort.
And we need you tomorrow, too.
Absolutely.
Super Bowl.
Anytime. You just tell me what you need.
Great. No, echo that, so thank you. Next, we're going to have a discussion around a grant award, the acceptance that we've received. So, Ms. Thompson, you want to speak to it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the district, under the leadership of Nicole Tomaselli, applied for a competitive grant through Consolidated Communications. We were awarded that grant in the total of $3,900. That $3,900 will be used to promote our Universal Design for Learning model, which the board had a presentation at a previous meeting. This will include the purchase of technology for kindergarten and preschool, and also some flexible seating within the classroom. When we talk about the operating budget, we separate needs from wants. And Mrs. Tomaselli is dedicated to using grants to purchase some of the wants. So I give Nicole a lot of credit for this grant. So I'm asking for the board to accept the $3,900.
Looking for a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion, comments? Just a big thank you to Nicole Tomaselli and to Consolidated Communications for this grant. You know, it's going to go over it well, so it'll be, like you said, it's the wants, but it really is the needs also, but appreciate that. All right, all approved? All right, thank you very much. All right, something I've been looking forward to. Jeff Mackey coming up to talk about the facilities plan.
Hello, all. All right, so facilities update. I'll start with staffing. First off, full staff. I bring that up, one, because we have an excellent staff that we've had for many years. Two, the majority of school districts around, if you ever go online and look, they are hurting in our field. So we're very, very fortunate to have such a hardworking and dedicated crew, which mostly range from 4 years to 34 years in tenure. So that's a huge plus for us, to have that consistency. One of those, Larry Guay, our custodian at Central School, has been here for 34 years. That's the longest tenured facilities worker and district worker. So that speaks to this environment that we have here. And then to add to that, we do have 2 employees that are grant funded that have been here for a little bit over a year, which has been amazing. They've been 2 awesome hires, especially in a world where they're temporary employees. We knocked it out of the park with these 2. And it's been great because it adds versatility and flexibility and productivity to everything that we do in facilities. And onto that, I'll slide into current state of the buildings and projects that we have going on and have done. You know, this crew, I can't talk more about them, how awesome they are. They are so flexible. They work outside of their realm. I have custodians who are willing to help paint, help do flooring, help do ceiling tiles. It's amazing. I'm able to do so many in-house projects to help save, you know, dollars after dollars after dollars, which is awesome. You know, we did wrap up a slower summer thanks to the renovation, which is awesome, but I was still able to be very, very productive. I was able to do polished concrete floor, remove some of the last bit of asbestos here. That was big. Routine maintenance happens, you know, we're still running. It happens daily, weekly, monthly. You know, we have had a few random projects come up, some small electrical, some small plumbing, some small HVAC, nothing major. So that moves into the budget. Current budget's looking really well. No major unseen, you know, expenditures. We have had a couple of small ones. The nurse stairs outside of the Central School. They were stairs that we didn't use a lot pre-COVID, but now we use them on occasion. And once we were out there, they were a little bit past due for, you know, a little bit more than we had that we could take on. So I had those rebuilt. And for safety concerns, I finished fencing in the preschool playground, and that worked out. That had some fencing, and we finished it off. Other than that, I'm looking into a current roof drain issue at Central School, and that's pretty much it for that. You know, budget is in good working order right now. And lastly, looking towards the future. My goal here is going to be looking at more bigger projects. Pavement. It's long overdue for the roadways and the pavement around here to be done, and roofing. Roofing is, we have a lot of original roofs here. Knock on wood, they've held up well. We've gotten our money out of them, but it's due time to start getting that on a schedule. So we'll be seeing that come up, and then still upgrades to painting, flooring, ceiling tiles, the small things. You know, we'll do as much in-house as we can and go from there. So yeah, I'll open up to any questions you have.
Questions, comments? So I'll probably geek out a little bit here because I've been able to walk around with Jeff a few times, and recently, just a few months ago, we walked around the middle school here. And one thing as a school board member and as a taxpayer in the community I appreciate is that you started the log of all the major equipment to say when was the last repaired, replaced, maintenance, something that, you know, hadn't been there as detailed as that before you. So I appreciate that. Also, I think you've probably understated it, the accolades to you and the team of there's work that we would send out that would be costing us 2-3 times as much. And because you've taken that work in-house, we've been able to save money on facilities. Last year when we challenged you to say, hey, can we cut your budget in half or more so we can push that money towards the 60s wing? A little hesitant. We talked about it a little bit, and it was like, okay, but we'll do some of that work in-house, and we can, we don't have to do some of this right now. We can delay a year. And you took that on, and you did more than what we expected. So just a big, kudos and very appreciative of that.
I appreciate it. I like a challenge, so.
Yeah. And then when we worked on the budget this year, and what you brought forth for the budget was very methodical, very, like, here's why. It wasn't just like, we're getting ahead of this, I want to replace it just because. It was like, nope, this is the end of life, here's the equipment, it's almost end of life, let's do it now. So appreciate the conversations on that and, being proactive and spending our taxpayer money wisely. So
My
thank you.
pleasure. Thank you.
All right, next we're going to turn it over to the other Jeff to talk about the 60s wing.
Thank you. 60s wing continues to progress. We have the in-building HVAC units operational. There's a canopy in the back. I don't know if you have a chance to see it, but that canopy is installed. Might be a little bit more work to do on that. I expect that we're going to have some of the major stuff that we want to wait until the break done. We'll have that completed. And I believe Christmas break is around the time that we anticipate having that done. We have the bathroom air handler units, the HVAC units, which will be put in at that time when the bathrooms can be decommissioned. In the meantime, we've installed, or our general contractor has installed radiant heating on the ceiling to make sure that those rooms stay warm enough for use. So we're moving along. Things are good. I haven't had any sudden hits on the budget as of late. I believe that you did have a budget estimate that looked like we were favorable, which I believe we reviewed the last time. So, we hadn't. About I believe it's about 172,000 favorable as of the last estimate that our general contractor and project manager had put together. So about 10% of project cost. I don't know what that final number is going to be until until the project is fully complete. We still have, I believe, for our general contractor alone, because billing does lag. I mean, the last billing that I saw, I think we still had about $1 million left to pay on it, just because they billed a little late. But based on where we are from a supply chain standpoint, from a labor standpoint, and looking at the fact that we've been able to do better with that project than we had initially anticipated, with the brickwork, canopy in the back, I'm pretty pleased that we are budget favorable. And if we can stay budget favorable at 10%, I'd be really, really happy with that if we can get to that number. So it's good stuff. Any questions from the board?
No, I'd just like to say a little bit more for the public. $172,000 is what, to your point, right now it looks like that's what the underspend is going to be, which is great. Mm-hmm. We'll decide, we should talk about that a little bit, but, Megan and I and you, Jeff, and a few others were challenging the contractors back a year and plus ago when, saying, well, contingency, can we bring that contingency down? And, we negotiated that and we brought that down. So to see that we're still 10% under after we've challenged the contingency, after supply chain issues, and just labor, inflation, everything that's been going on in this chaotic supply chain, I think it says a lot for the value that we're getting here. And, hopefully, reminding the public of this, when we start talking about the next item coming up pretty soon about what do we want to do about, the addition for the central school, that we are meticulously challenging budgets, looking at what we bring and get value, and still challenging it. So we're not just meeting that number. We're trying to get much lower than that by asking, how can we be creative? Can we do something different that's not as expensive? So just a thank you to Gino and the team for what they've done.
It's been excellent. And just to let all of our HCS parents out there know who do drop off or pick up, the rear lot we're aiming to have that reopened the first weekend of January, not the week that we come back from Christmas break, but the week right after that. So the traffic patterns will be changing just a bit, and just to keep an eye out for that. In the back, we had the drop-off loop that when you would drop the students off, they would be very close to the 60s wing. I think we're going to straighten that out. We've already done some line painting in the back. So I just give a heads up to the parents who participate in drop-off or pickup at Central School to be on the lookout for communications from Dr. Cheney as we approach that timeframe. And I don't know that the board will be meeting prior to that, so I just wanted to put a heads up out there for the parents.
All right. Coming back to that 172,000 or whatever it will be.
Yep.
We funded this 60s wing from two different funding vehicles. One was from our capital reserve.
Yep.
The other was from our actual, what was in the operating budget itself, or what we partitioned out to for the 60s wing to cover the additional. That 172,000 is the board able to put that back into capital reserve if we decide to, or what is the
So
this?
so we haven't drawn down on capital reserve as of yet. So I may not draw down on that amount if we don't end up spending it.
Okay.
So that's one thing that we could do and leave that in the capital reserve.
Okay.
So, and I'm glad that we're having that discussion because, as I said, we have, I believe, 993,000 still showing on the budget for the general contractor, which means that their billings are lagging. I don't make an application to the capital reserve fund every time we get a bill in, but when they get substantial enough, I can make a request to the capital reserve fund to reimburse the district for that. And if that's the way the board would like to go, I think it's a good philosophy. And so I can withhold requesting that amount. They wouldn't fund that amount. So.
Well, that's why I want to ask you first before having a conversation with the
Yep.
board, what we could do with that. I don't think we'd take a vote on it till we actually know, but just for discussion, my take is we have depleted the capital reserve pretty low. We returned already 1.7 million to the taxpayers since the beginning of the school year. So I think that my opinion would be to put this into the capital reserve, start to build that up. For things like the roof that we're hearing about or anything else going on. So just, agreed?
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
All right. So, and you think that in that second meeting in January, since the first one will be for a different reason, second meeting in January, we'll know that number finalized, Jeff?
Oh, the second meeting in January, I believe we'll have a pretty solid number at that point.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. All right. All right, so go right back to you, Jeff, on the 2022 bond article discussion.
So you have in your packets, I apologize, you might have duplicates. I just can't spread good news quickly enough or in quantities enough. An updated budget for the project of $12,595,000, which is down $400,000 from the last time we had the initial estimate.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yep. So that is the amount that I would propose putting on the warrant. This is a reflection of a couple factors, a little bit of belt tightening all around, better estimates as we're getting closer to the time that we're going to put this on the warrant. And so that's a number that we're very comfortable with for the work. In addition to that, you'll have 2 pages behind that from the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank on the tax impact of a 15-year and 10-year bond for that amount, for the $12,595,000. You can see the first year it's 23 cents. We go at its height to 81 cents on a 15-year bond, down to 65. On a 10-year bond, it also starts at 23, but goes to a little over $1 and then a little under $1 at year 10 per 1,000.
Just going to take a minute to
Mhm.
soak this in a little bit.
Yep. The good thing is that interest rates are still low, 2% on a 15-year, 10% on 1.5% on a 10-year.
That's the first question I was going to have. I know last year we were looking at a 0.8 interest rate, so it's essentially, it's doubled since last year, correct?
That's right. And the 10-year January 21 bond sale just a few months ago was 0.81%. So the bond bank is estimating 1.5% on a 10-year. The 15-year Their most recent bond sale was 1.49%. They're estimating 2%. So I believe they will be going up by the time we go to bond. Hopefully it'll be lower than 1.5%, but that's a conservative number that they've provided for us. Conservative estimate.
So board members, questions, comments?
Jeff, was there any additional changes to the plans to get this $400,000 down, or was this just a tightening up of numbers from the contractors?
I would say largely a tightening up of the numbers. One of the questions that came up before was that the courtyard that would be created looked more built out than it had in previous versions for outdoor classrooms, and how much of that work was included. And we'd had extensive discussions with the contractors and project manager and architect prior to that last version of the plan coming out to really keep those costs minimal. On the one hand, to make sure that we have enough infrastructure there while the space is open before it's closed in, so that we don't have to incur extraordinary expense trying to, get bobcats in and things like that later. But at the same time, not having it, fully completed. Hardscaping is very, very expensive, and that's something that we could do if we found it to be useful as we go along. So those costs were really trimmed out quite a bit. And if you recall, the plan did have some options for septic as well, which would need to be replaced as part of this project, which I don't think we'd focused on quite enough, and we had the parking lot, reflective of that in this plan, so that we would.
The septic is in this, or it's not in this?
It is in this plan.
Okay,
yeah.
There's been so much talked about the last few years about kind of being on borrowed time with that, and that if we have a major failure, we're in trouble.
Not in a great place.
Thank you.
And so we've looked at as well, because that septic is near the rear parking lot where the turnaround is for drop-off and pickup, to make sure that we have that septic system aligned to allow us to maximize space in that drop-off pickup area once it's complete.
Thank you.
Hmm?
Jeff, correct me, just give me, as I'm thinking about the math here between our 15-year and 10-year, and for, anyone watching at home or, going to report on this or, think about this after. So, I'm looking at the 10-year bond at $1 increase, keep it simple, $1 increase for every $1,000 your home is worth. Every $100,000, it's $100. Correct? So normally we say about a $400,000 home. So that increase for a 10-year bond for a $400,000 home is $400 a year. Correct?
First.
Okay. So when we're looking at the 15-year bond, we're talking about the difference of, I'm going to say approximately $400. It's a little bit more than that for a $400,000 home. And then on the 15-year bond, we're talking about
320.
$300?
$320, maybe.
Okay. So $320 versus $400 is what we're talking about per year on a $400,000 home of a 15-year versus a 10-year bond. Except the 15-year, of course, goes 15 years, and it's the interest that we're paying on that is about $1.2 million more over the course of the loan, correct?
Correct.
So by going with a 15-year, we're essentially saving a taxpayer with a $400,000 home $80 per month.
Per year.
I mean, per year, sorry, $80 per year. But if we look at, now we're going to do a little bit more math here.
I think the difference is about $1 million.
15 years times 320 versus 10 years times 400. I don't know if you got a calculator right there. What's 15 times 320?
So it's 4,800.
How much?
4,800.
So if we went with a, again, $400,000 home on the 15-year, it's going to cost the taxpayers $4,800 total.
Total.
If we go with a 10-year, it'll cost $4,000 per taxpayer.
A little more than that, but conceivably, yeah.
Ish, you're right. So if it's 4,100, 4,200.
Sorry, I must have forgotten to
We're
pay the
turning
bill.
off the lights because we want to pay for the addition.
That's right. Yeah.
So, but my point is that, originally I was saying, well, what is a 15-year, depending on the interest rates, we were talking about that because it's gone up that much. But I'm curious, what other board members think about that. If we break it down into, those solid, whole numbers, instead of trying to say, oh, half taxpayers think it's $1. Well, it's not. It's over the life, it's $4,000, $4,200 in that range for a 10-year, and it's around $4,800 over a 15-year. To me, it doesn't make sense to go with a 15 now that I see the numbers.
Well, I think that when I look at it, if you look at the 107, I'm looking at about 420, 428. So it would be, I think it'd be a little bit more than the 4,000, so I don't know how close they would get,
Okay, so 4,280.
maybe. Yeah,
So, for me, it's
600, yeah.
Like a 600.
$600 difference over the course of, 10 or 15 years. I don't know. I see pros and cons with both sides, so I just spoke what my rationale in my head is spoke it out loud, but what do other members think?
Yeah, well, I mean, what you're saying makes sense, because if you go with 15, you're not paying significantly more out of your pocket, but you're paying more overall. It doesn't, it's not really
Right.
a lot in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
It's not a huge savings, I guess, to
Right.
go with 15 from 10.
You're saving per month, per year,
Right.
but you're spending more long-term,
Right.
like you would expect. You increase a loan, you go more, the term is longer, you're going to pay more interest.
Right.
And again, it's, for what we have here, $2.2 million interest on 15 years, or 1.26 on a 10-year. So it's an extra $1 million in interest with a 15-year bond.
Right, which is significant amount of money, so it seems like we could not spend that.
I'm looking for somebody to be a devil's advocate here, just to, what their thoughts are, but
I mean, whenever we've talked about this, the thought was, okay, well, is it more palatable to taxpayers to be able to pay less per year by stretching out the loan? I think in the past, we thought there was more of a difference between those two. When you break down the numbers that we have now, I'm not being a devil's advocate, because I think it, as both of you have said, that it just doesn't seem like the smart financial choice to pay $1 million more on the amount we're talking about yearly. And we're not talking about this continuing to, I want to make sure people know that this is, let's go with the $400 number. This is not $400 the first year, then more 400, like, we're not going 800, then 1,200.
Right.
I just think that's important to talk about, because sometimes that gets, these are big numbers, they get a little funky sometimes, but I can't play devil's advocate, because $1 million in interest there are things that we could be utilizing that for if we were going to ask the taxpayer for it. Obviously, this is hugely important. This is like the number one project. But the numbers just don't, to me, don't make sense to go with a 15-year.
And I know I'm going to make some numbers. It's like, what's that, about $65,000 per year is what we'd be paying extra in that interest? You know, it's over the 15, over 15 years. So it's just, I can't fathom, you know, thinking that 15-year makes sense for us. I mean, we've outlined many times in the past, Mr. Thompson's, you know, done the assessment, looked at what's there, what is hindering for our school system, for our kids over there. It's not a matter of if we need this, it's a matter of, you know, how we're going to pay for it, and I just don't see it with a 15-year.
Okay, $1 million just in interest is crazy.
I think the only devil's advocate point that might be helpful is that 15 years more closely matches the useful life of the work. In fact, I don't think this is going to be a 15-year. It'll probably be 30 or more, we hope, longer than that. It's probably the only thing in favor of 15 is that you're more closely matching the economic output with the actual useful life, but to the tune of $1 million, right? So.
Yeah,
That's it.
that one, as a taxpayer, I think of, well, we paid for all these different schools and they still keep up. They're not being demolished, so the useful life, I mean, we've got the 40s wing, we've got the 60s wing, so they've far surpassed that 15-year, you know, depreciation numbers, so thanks for trying to be the devil's advocate.
That's it. I mean, that's aside from the fact that it is a bit more of an impact, and if seeing a dollar on the schedule would be a little overwhelming for some of our taxpayers versus 80 cents for the same year, you get that consideration too.
I mean, I appreciate the work that both you and Mr. Thompson did over the meetings with ratcheting down some of the things and said, okay, here's some things we can cut. And then we went back again and worked with project management to say, okay, here's some other, you know, another 400,000. So all in all, I know we've brought this down by over $500,000 or more just in the last few months by, you know, going through line by line with the PMs in his companies and the project managers, et cetera. So we appreciate that for sure. I mean, it's still a big number. I'm not going to shy away from, you know, numbers in the past that were at 4 million, went up to 8, it's gone up to 10, now it's at 12,595. But we're doing disjustice to the children that by not bringing this forward, as we know that we have, you know, technology on a cart, practically a room with just books that sit on, you know, books that it's like a storage area, not a library. Yeah. And I know Dr. Cheney, I'm looking at Dr. Cheney just saying, I know she's being as creative as possible over there with teachers, keeping them happy, with students learning as much, but I just can't see us continuing on with a prosperous school without this.
And the number will be higher next year, year after year.
Yep. So, I don't know. I know we're going to talk about it in a moment, but I mean, I don't think we need to vote on this, but I think at this moment, but I think we're in agreement that 10-year makes more sense than a 15. But maybe we do have to vote on it right now, or is it, Melissa, can you help us?
I would think the board would want to vote on something if you wanted to move it to warrant before the public hearing in January. If you don't do that tonight, then you might have to have a special meeting before then.
Okay. Sorry. I just wasn't sure if we should do that now or when we get to H on the warrant articles discussion, but.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question.
Yep. So yeah, I'd like to just go through, and if the board's okay with that, carry that on H and just go through and bring that in there at that point.
Yep.
Keep it all together? All right. Sorry, Melissa.
Okay.
All right, now going to go into a budget discussion with Mr. Thompson, Mr. Dowd.
Well, thank you. Mr. Thompson is setting up the projector as we speak. In your packet, you will have Hempstead School District proposed budget 22-23. So there's a summary page on top. And after that, there is a report by object, a system generator report by object. The last page is a summary showing by object code salaries, benefits, and expenses by difference. So I'm going to focus, for our purposes of discussion here, on the budget itself. So when we presented to you on November 23rd, I presented a budget of $31,630,706. Since then, I've had a couple adjustments to the budget. One is to the Pinkerton tuition, which has gone up $30,000 to $182 to reflect the true 4.5 increase that we have been told to budget, as well as the addition of a student to the head count. And we have some copier and tonnage usage, which did not get picked up in the original budget, just under $11,000, bringing the new budget to $31,671,796. Compared to last year's budget of $32,346,283, this is down $674,487, or a drop of 2.09%. So any questions on the overall numbers or the changes? And Mr. Thompson has it up over there on the projector as well, which is helpful. So some of the major factors in that, and I'll ask Mr. Thompson to advance the slide. So on this next slide, this is what we went over for the changes from the budget that was presented on the 23rd to the budget that's being presented today. And next slide, please. So next we have the major factors, which are changes over 21,000. Our salaries are up 843,000, almost 844,000. That's a combination of normal increases, collective bargaining agreement obligations, and we have a little bit of a shift. Last year in the budget, I had budgeted the official admin SAU services at 438,000, so that there was a placeholder in there. Some of those salaries are being picked up in that salaries line as well. You can see a little way down the page, the negative 438,000 under 310. Some of our other major drivers, group insurance, we experienced a 14.2% guaranteed maximum rate, which is our budget number essentially, so that reflects that. If the true number comes in lower than that, then we will have the benefit of having that a little bit of extra in the budget to give back to the taxpayers. We have some teacher retirement that went down, employee retirement, which went down. I don't know where the calculations just seemed off in the current year, so I corrected them and made them a little bit tighter. Our other employee benefits is up 22,000. We had professional services up 91,000 due to largely student needs and special education. Our repair and maintenance budget 430 went down 1,841,000. That was partly due to the warrant article for the renovation of 1,660,000. Transportation is up, normal increases. Software, we have some additional programs plus normal increases. Tuition overall is up 43,989, and that's a combination of our regular student tuition at Pinkerton and special education tuition. The special education side is up. The regular student tuition is down. So our typical student tuition at Pinkerton is a bit down based on population. Books and info resources is down. That's a 640 object code. The reason that's down 178,000 is because we had several programs in social studies and math at the elementary and middle schools that were initiatives that we're not going to be we've completed, don't need to go forward with next year. Equipment down 28,808. Fund transfers, that 930, that's up 270,000. But recall, that's the offsetting expense that I need to book for ESSER that's offset by revenue, by grant revenue. So not really an increase. The rest of it is just a general other increase of $66,061. So I'll post these to the website as well for the public. If you have any questions, it may be helpful as well if you wanted to see some of these major changes in terms of difference on the last page of that packet. You can see by object code. I've sorted those expenses just by the difference to see where we had the greatest increases to where we had the least, and to where we had the actual greatest decrease. So if you're comfortable with that budget, that's the number that I would like to move forward to the warrant, and that'd be $31,671,796. So part of this process that I think is helpful, we have the operating budget number that goes on the warrant, and we also have the default number. So if you're okay with the operating budget number, if you have any questions, I'm happy to address them.
Not at this time. I think we did a great review together with everybody throughout this last 34 months, so.
Yep. And just for everyone who may be watching on our simulcast, I just want to reiterate that we had a department presentation, I believe 2-3 meetings ago. We then had a full budget presentation at the last meeting on the 23rd. And so now we're having the presentation of the budget overall, again, a review and some of the additional things that we've put in. So any questions on those items? There is more detail, much more detail available by viewing or looking at the materials from those meetings. So our default budget is coming in at $31,972,403. I don't have that up on the slide. It's showing as down compared to last year's budget of $32,346,283 by $373,000, almost $374,000. The difference, and you can see, I have another schedule for just the default budget. Yep. And so on that, this is the detail that we are required to post by the state, which is by function object level, by detail line level, with the reason for an increase or a decrease. So I build this budget by taking the 2022 voted budget and increasing or decreasing it by a number of factors, not the least of which is contractual or legal. And so you can see I've articulated what those differences are. Right off the bat in that first 1100 regular education function code, you can see our HEA and HAS CBA increases to salaries, the decrease for textbooks, for social studies, math, some network upgrades that were done that we would consider one-time only. Those were also removed. And as you go through, you can see largely our changes are CBA contract driven. I've indicated on this page, which I'll also post for the public, when the vote was on those items. Special services increases and related CBA increases. Yeah, and that's largely it. We have a transportation cost, obviously we're required by law to provide that service, and we have the 14% increase for the guaranteed maximum rate for insurance. Some other factors have changed in correlation to the wages, like Social Security, retirement. I've removed the 1.66 million from the default budget for the current year as well. I've added the 270,000 in federal fund transfers because, well, we have that money and what we do if we couldn't spend it. So that is offset by revenue as well. When we look at the regular operating budget and we look at the default budget, they're off. They're off, I think, almost about 1% this year. And essentially the default statute says that we start the default budget with what our appropriations were last year, what was voted last year. And I go in and add or remove based on what that statute says. When we have discretionary increases in the budget, and those don't get reflected in the default, that's the purpose of the default. But the flip side is a lot of times when we have discretionary decreases in the budget where we've made some cuts that we just felt were belt tightening or whatever it is, those also don't get picked up in the default budget. So we don't end up decreasing it always. We have to match the contractual increases. So there is a difference this year of about $300,000 between the operating budget and the default budget, with the operating budget being lower by that amount. And I think that that's how the statute would determine the default budget to be in relation to the operating budget when you follow the statute and when we make cuts to the budget in areas that we were not one time only, that we find that we just make some efficiencies in. This is what happens. So not always, but in this case we're doing very well, I think, from a district budget perspective, from an operating budget perspective.
That's good. Any questions about the $300,000 difference? Good? Okay. So next, we're going to go in the warrant article discussion, and I apologize, I did go a little bit out of sync here with the votes, but we'll go through this and vote on whether or not to bring these to warrant or not as we talk through them on the articles. So we'll talk about, again, for those watching, we're talking about the warrant articles that'll be in front of the public eventually. And we do have our first public hearing on the bond issue and the proposed budget. That'll be on January 11th, Tuesday, January 11th, starts at 7 p.m. in the middle school. Then there'll be a second session. There'll be, the next one will be deliberative session 1, which will be February 8th, which is another Tuesday, here at 7 o'clock. It does have a snow date, February 9th. So just for those that are watching, that's when those two big meetings are going to happen. Now we'll start talking about the articles. So this Article 1 is, of course, is the election of the officers, 2 school board members up, 3-year terms each. Article 2, what we talked about just a moment ago with the bond article for the Hampstead Central School Addition project. So I'll read this, and then we'll talk about and vote if we want to bring this to warrant or not. Shall the voters of Hampstead School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $12,595,000 for the Hampstead Central School Addition project and authorize the issuance of not more than $12,595,000 of bonds or notes under and in compliance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, to authorize the school board to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver such bonds or notes, and to determine the rate of interest thereon, the maturity and other terms thereof, to authorize the school board to apply for, obtain, accept, and expend any federal, state, or other aid that may be available for said project, and to authorize the school board to take any action, any and all action necessary in connection therewith, or to pass any other vote relative thereto, and further to raise and appropriate an additional sum of, talk about that, 10-year or 15-year for the first year's interest payment on the bond. So first, let's talk about the 10-year or 15-year and be looking for a motion from school board on which one we should entertain.
Do we need 2 motions?
We're going to need a second motion after.
Okay, to move this, move the addition plus the picking the interest. Got it.
Yeah, first motion would be for the
Addition, the project
for
itself.
the bond, for
Right.
the, sorry, I'm messing up a little bit on the terms of the bond. And then the second one would be to bring it to warrant.
Well, I'll make a motion to go with the 10-year term for the Central School project.
All right,
I'll second.
yeah, second. Any discussion?
I just think it makes more sense.
Yeah,
I think fiscally, you're asking for $1 million extra. And if it was a big swing between the yearly impact on taxpayers, I'm not saying it's not a substantial amount. I fully acknowledge that. Then it would be a different story, but
yeah. So it's $80 to $100 a year is the difference. But long-term, you're spending $600 more.
right.
So I agree. I guess any more discussion or all approve? All right. So be looking for a motion to bring this to warrant now for $12.595 million with a 10-year bond with, let's see, make sure I get this, with an additional sum of $1.259 million. Let's see,
I think you're looking at-
$1,259,162.50. Oh, this is for the
Just
first
the
year's.
first year.
Sorry
Right.
about that.
First year,
First year's interest, which is, help me out with that, is
$314,000?
$314,875.
Perfect.
Yep.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Nope, we need it. Let's go.
All right. All right. All approved? All right.
Yeah.
So next, looking to talk Article 3 operating budget. As we talked about with Jeff, that we would be looking for the operating budget totaling $31,671,796. And if it fails, it would be $31,972,403 for the default budget. So I'll read this one also. Shall the voters of Hsdsb School District raise and appropriate an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant for the purposes set forth therein totaling $31,671,796, question mark. Should this article be defeated, the operating budget shall be $31,972,403, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Hsdsb School District or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, 10 and 16. Thank you. Like X, to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Note, warrant Article 3 operating budget does not include appropriations proposed under any other warrant articles. So I'll be looking for a motion to move forward with the default, with the operating budget request and the default budget as stated.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All right, all approve?
Thank you.
All right. Article 4, I believe we've already moved that one forward, so we're good there. Again, for those at home, our Article 4 is on the capital reserve. This is where we voted already to move this to warrant for raise and appropriate up to $500,000 to be placed in the school renovation, reconstruction, capital improvement, capital reserve fund, which was established in 2006. With such amount to be transferred from the June 30th, 2022 unassigned fund balance surplus in excess of $150,000 available for transfer on July 1st, 2022. Again, we always have this in the warrant article for those. You'll see it on voting day and for deliberation discussions. The first $150,000 of surplus will be returned to the taxpayers. This, if this was approved, and went to vote, the next $500,000 of the surplus will be placed in the capital reserve fund. Any additional surplus will be returned to the taxpayers. The funds from the article come from the 2021-2022 school budget surplus, not from additional taxes. All right.
I would ask the board to consider on that warrant article for capital reserve, because the interest payment for that first year on the bond would be so steep. Do you want to make a contingency on that capital reserve contribution that perhaps it wouldn't happen if the bond passed? It's a pretty heavy interest payment there for the first year, the $314,000.
Can you say that one more time?
So if the bond passes, we would be appropriating an interest payment of $314,000. So if the bond passes, does it make sense to if the capital reserve passed, would it make sense to make an additional contribution of $500,000 to the capital reserve? Or would it be better just to do one or the other, basically?
I mean,
Between the two of them, it's a burden of about $800,000.
open it, wait to hear what other board members think.
So if the bond
So-
passed, no contribution.
I want to make sure the interest payment, the $314,000, is payable February of 2023?
Mhm.
Is that what okay.
Yep.
So our 2022, 2023 budget would be in effect, and we would potentially have a $314,000 expense that may not be accounted for in the budget. Am I,
No, we would budget that. So if the bond passed, I would budget 314,000 in that first year for
Right.
that payment
right,
and appropriate it.
and the 500,000, because it comes from surplus, would be contingent on having it at the end of 2022, the 2020, this year's budget.
Yep.
I'm working my way through this on where money is coming from and where it needs to go.
So we'd essentially give it back to the taxpayers as relief. If the 500,000 didn't go through, we would give that back to taxpayers for relief on the 2023 appropriations. So we would be increasing the appropriations by 300,000, but that 500,000 that we would normally keep for capital reserve, we would be giving back to them as tax relief, so it would almost offset quite a bit. Just a thought.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. I think personally, I would like to keep the 500,000 regardless, because we know we have some other big projects. I do appreciate that idea, because obviously we're asking for a lot of funds. For me personally, I would like to keep the 500,000 as is.
Yeah, if, for me, where it is, you know, if the first year was that $7, $6, then I would be in agreement, because that is a lot. Now, we look at, it's 0.23, so add in the 500,000, it's still under what it'll be in the second year. So in my mind, it's still less than, and knowing we have big projects that we've put off. We do have an aging roof, as Mr. Mackey has just mentioned. We do have the pavement and tarring. And we just, we hear a lot like, well, why don't you guys save up for things? So it's not these big, so I'm hoping going forward, we don't have to go after big items like an addition, and that we'll start adding in the capital reserve. And we're not gonna be able to do that unless we have something that really starts that number quick, And I think, for me, keep it. I mean, I appreciate it bringing it up because it is thought-provoking. But I do think, I agree with Caitlin that I think we should keep it for the purposes of building that nest egg up for some of the bigger projects that are going to come down here. And we don't want to come back for another bond article anytime soon. So, I don't know. Aaron, Megan, Jay? Good?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
I know Article 5 is a discussion we have not had yet, so I'd appreciate if Ms. Thompson and Mr. Dowd, you lead this about the school lot line adjustment.
Thank you. So at the Hampstead Central School, I don't know how well known the fact is, but at the Hampstead Central School, we have what I would consider to be a significant encroachment on our abutters' property to the west. Where Dr. Hart's old office used to be at 13 Emerson Ave. The Cronin family lives there now. Both Dr. Hart, his partner Dr. Morse, and the Cronins have been just exceptionally good neighbors in allowing the encroachment. However, it really is something that, we have a very friendly neighbor there now. It is something that needs to be addressed, and I think as times have changed, and I can appreciate the courtesies extended to us by all of the residents of 13 Emerson, and hopefully we've been able to extend courtesies back, that it is time to make that situation right. And I have a couple reasons and a couple things that I'll tell you about as we go through this. So I have up on the screen, and you should all have in front of you, a proposed lot line adjustment. And the reality of it is that our current driveway on that side of the building, the entrance driveway, is what I would consider to be substantially on the property of 13 Emerson Ave. It's substantially on the Cronin's property. In addition to that, and I'm not sure when it happened, but in addition to that, we also have electrical lines, a telephone pole, and underground wires that run just beyond, why not? That run just beyond the driveway. So, and a lot of pieces have to come together for this sort of thing to happen. There's been no pressure, thankfully, by the neighbor. Obviously, he could deny access and things would not get very very neighborly, I guess, and they just haven't done that. They haven't thought about that. But I have more concerns for the school at this point and our liability than I do for the neighbor, and I have a lot of concerns for them. But, and you can see up on the screen, Bob, could you point to the red line for the folks who may be able to actually see it at home? That's where we're proposing. It's about 17 feet by the entire property line. So we would gain ownership of the remainder of the driveway. We would gain ownership of that lot up until, and with enough room for us to be able to service our power line, electrical pole, and underground utilities. Here are the concerns that I have. Obviously, access could be denied to us. I don't know that that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. I would hope not. But the broader concern that I have are the following. We're a municipal corporation. We have what's called and what's known as municipal immunity. And that immunity is very, very helpful. It essentially expunges the district of liability in the event of negligence. Therefore, if a student or staff member were to get injured on that portion, which you can see there's quite a bit of that driveway is on a butter's property, even though we use it, and even though they're there because we are a school, they work there, they go to school there, that neighbor would get dragged into a lawsuit. And our risk management company would say, well, look, we have this municipal immunity, so this isn't something that we would normally be liable for. However, a property owner who's not a municipal corporation may be liable for it. So we couldn't even do an easement for different reasons. But I'm concerned because the property owner would then, of course, need to cross-sue us for something that we may be having to reimburse him for or indemnify him for something that our risk management liability company won't cover, if that makes sense. So basically, where liability would not exist for us, possibly, it would exist for the neighbor, and we could get dragged in because of that and have something that is an uninsured risk to us, essentially. That's one concern. It's very unfair, I think, to the district to have that exposure of liability. What's the likelihood of this happening? I hope not very. I hope it doesn't happen. However, it gets to a point that we all have to look critically at what the risk exposure is to the district, and I do see this as an exposure. I see it as an exposure to the abutter as well. And even if it is a claim that is made that is without merit, I guarantee that the abutter's homeowner's insurance is going to go up as a result of that. So I'm just going to go back to the no good deed goes unpunished. They've been very, very courteous to us over the years, and we really need to recognize that there is an issue of liability. The other issue is, just think about this, and we have not had any cites from the Department of Education on this, but it has come up on a couple of different instances in the past. We can't even put a fence up on that side of the property to keep our students in from a safety perspective. We don't even have the option to do that. So this would at least allow us, if we had to, if the need arose, for us to have a fence, which is good practice. I think it's a general proposition. It's a good practice in this case because it keeps our students in, and it also keeps people off of what we use as a roadway. So I think it's about time. We've looked at this over the past several years. A couple things need to come in place. They did this year. We have a proposed lot line adjustment, which we would have in recordable form. If this is approved by the voters, we would move forward with it through planning board, zoning board if necessary, to have that lot line adjustment made. It is about 10% of that abutter's property, so it's not insignificant, but it's something that we just don't have a choice about because the 40s wing abuts that road, abuts that driveway. So we can't, it's not like it's something that we'd like to have. We do need two-way vehicular traffic, and we don't have a choice. We can't move the school, we can't move the building. My hope is in the future that if we were able to acquire this, that, and right now, if anyone who's driven down that knows that there are 2 lanes in and out, and that's it. And if you're a student or you're a parent who happens to need to walk down that road, God help you. My hope is, and as part of our design for the addition, if that area is reconfigured, that we would have about 3 feet from the building that we'd mark off as like a sidewalk. So at least there'd be some safe area for pedestrians to be able to travel without risking, themselves in moving traffic. So there are a couple different reasons that this is really about ripe to be resolved. And I do have a very hard time, I'm sure as all the members on the board do, with the fact that this is just a small town courtesy that's been extended. I would love to see extended, but the reality of today's world doesn't really support that from the abutters' perspective, who have been very, very courteous, and from my perspective, from a liability standpoint. So I don't know what the total is going to be. Certainly the board, we can chat later on that. If it's something that we'd like to move forward, I'd like to move forward open with an amount to be determined prior to the posting of the public hearing. And this is something that I can't really previously advertise because it's just, it's something that we have to have an answer for before we bring it up to the public, so.
Yeah, for me, I have questions. I'm just not sure what's the line of in a non-public versus public setting on this. So,
What do you mean?
just regarding and again, I don't know what I can, should or shouldn't ask that, because it's the first time we're talking about this
Yeah.
now. We've had some hints about this in the years past, but the pressure to do this now versus not do it, other discussions that I've had or not had. So that's where my kind of line of questioning is going.
Yeah, so I've had discussions with the abutter
Okay.
on that. Yeah, this would not be news to them. So we have some frameworks in theory and practice. We have two options in this type of scenario. One of them is to do a lot line adjustment, which is that we call it a lot line adjustment. We're essentially purchasing that strip of land from the abutter. The other thing that we can do, which we have with St. Anne's, is an easement, right? So we could do an easement that would give us essentially the right to use, but not own, that strip of land. And one of the problems with an easement is, and I'll contrast that with the situation at St. Anne's, if we have a right to use that and someone gets hurt, I can't indemnify the neighbor if it's one of our people, one of our employees or one of our students. Because again, that issue of liability, that we don't have that liability, that municipal immunity, so we don't have we can't accept that liability. I can't insure that for them. With St. Anne's, we have an easement, and we have a right to use that access road that we have, right? But the difference there is, and I don't get as concerned about liability, because guess what? We have municipal immunity. The church has charitable immunity, right? So if something were to happen, the church wouldn't be any more, there'd be no issue of liability. We both have about the same level of risk liability in that situation. So I'm not quite as concerned, but an easement in this case wouldn't work. So those are the two options, either a lot line adjustment where we acquire that piece and move the lot line over, or an easement where we simply agree and contract to be able to pass and repass over that land. And that easement option I don't think is very, very feasible.
And again, this is where, discussion non-public or not, but if we should talk about this in non-public, let me know. Has the owner suggested one way or another what they care about?
I wouldn't move forward with any proposal to the board in any form. I wouldn't even have this much of a survey done or a proposal put together without direction from, or agreement between us and the property owner. Okay. So the property owner is in agreement with that if we were to move forward with something, this is what it would be. Okay. So, and the other thing is, if it's an easement, he still pays taxes on it, which is just a kick in the head for him. So it's not helpful. So this is the way that we would go. We've had discussions over the course of a couple of years, I'd say, and we've had sit-down discussions to say, this is what it is. This is what it's going to look like. Let me just finalize the paperwork. We can discuss some other options in non-public, and then we can move forward to, hopefully get that wrapped up. So.
Questions from others right now? When will we have a dollar figure?
I think as a board, we should probably chat about that a little bit.
Say again?
As a board, we should chat on that. I would expect that we would have it before the public hearing,
Okay.
before we post for the public hearing.
So will we have to come back and have a meeting to vote on that amount before bringing this to the meeting at the beginning of January?
The public hearing?
Yeah.
Or would you put it forward? Have we done that before? Put it forward with some contingencies on it?
I do recall that the board put forward a motion for the bond a couple of years ago with a contingency for the interest payment.
To be what it was?
If that answers your question, I have seen that done.
Yeah.
I mean,
So if you wanted to put it forward like that, I suggest that we meet non-public, talk about, negotiating a strategy and a range. And if it falls, if we can get something within that range, then that's what it would be. If we needed to meet, we could always meet. My preference is not to meet, but
Yeah, I don't know. Board members, your thoughts?
I think it might make sense if we, I mean, we have a non-public anyways. We can not vote on this yet, go into the non-public, we can come out of the non-public, and then, I mean, we can go through the rest of the agenda, table this to after the non-public.
Yep.
And then that way we can come out, we can still get it moved, hopefully, tonight.
some
but-
discussion at that
but
point.
yes, but we get a little more information,
yep.
if that works.
Yeah, because
That'd be my
I'm
suggestion.
hesitant to move forward with this without a dollar figure, because this could be $2 million, and I know it's not, but I just want to know so comfortably what that is before
Yeah.
even thinking about, yeah, let's do this now, or do we have to wait? So,
I think we've laid out the rationale, the general strategy on this, and I think that's helpful for the public.
Yep.
I think the rest of it is for us in non-public, and if we can come out and come up with even a maximum on that, or some amount, some threshold, that'd be helpful. So,
yeah,
good.
okay. Thank you. And that concludes our discussion on the warrant articles. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Thompson to talk about the HMS principal search for 2022-2023 for a new principal at the middle school, because we're losing something.
I know, I think we're all still in denial, but as the board and the public are aware, at a previous school board meeting, the board accepted the retirement of Mrs. Denola, who will be missed tremendously. And so we now need to begin the process of identifying the next leader of the Hampstead Middle School. And so I've been working with the senior leadership team to develop a process and a timeline for that. And I wanted to review that with the board, seek any input, and just make the public aware of the process. So beginning next week, we will post the position. This is a little on the early side. That's exactly where we want to be, so that we can attract as many qualified candidates as possible. The week of January 3rd, when we return from break, we'll send a communication to parents and staff seeking volunteers for committee participation. The composition of the committee will be, the committee will be facilitated by the Director of 21st Century Learning Assessment Technology, that's Nicole Tomaselli. The Hampstead Central School Principal, Dr. Cheney, will serve on that committee. We will select 4 Hampstead Middle School staff members. We will try to get a diverse group of staff members to participate. We'll have 1 Hampstead School Board member, which we can discuss, and then also 1 Hampstead parent. So that essentially is the search committee. That search committee, we would establish the search committee the week of January 10th, and that we would also, that week, we'd close the position, so the posting. So the posting will be open for approximately 3 weeks. The week of January 17th, we'll hold a committee organizational meeting, review applicants, and choose the candidates for an interview. I can tell you, it's a tight job market out there. There are not large application pools for any position, and that includes school administrators. However, Hampstead has a very strong reputation as delivering a quality education, and I think that will attract some quality candidates. And then the week of the 24th, we'll conduct round 1 interviews. This will include a writing prompt, a tour of the building, and the task of that committee will be to select a minimum of 2 finalists that would be moved forward to the senior leadership team. The week of January 31st, we'd host a meet and greet here at the middle school. And that meet and greet would essentially have 3 components. One would be a meet and greet with the staff and faculty. That will be facilitated by Tracy Griffinhagen, our Director of Student Services. A student meet and greet, which will be facilitated by Assistant Principal Lynn Joseph, and a community and parent meet and greet, and I will facilitate that group. So the week of February 7th, we'll conduct the finalists interviews with the senior leadership team. That's Tracy Griffinhagen, Nicole Tomaselli, Jeff Dowd, and myself. And then the week of 2/14, we would bring a candidate nomination to the school board for final selection. So that's the process that we're looking to adhere to for the new principal at Hsdsb Middle School, and I'll entertain any questions that the board might have.
Any questions from board members?
Sounds like a plan.
Raise your hand.
As Mr. Thompson said, he is going to be looking for one school board member to participate on the principal search. Do we have any volunteers?
Yep.
All right. Any others that would like to have a discussion with Mr. Giard for it?
Fight it out.
Fight it out, if you will. All right. So you got your person right there.
Wonderful.
So looking forward to it, and thank you for spearheading this, and should be good. All right. We'll move on to policies. We have second reading, board members. In your packets, policy code ACE. Policy code ACE. This is for the second reading and adoption. So I'll be looking for a motion to adopt policy code ACE.
So moved.
Second.
Second, Mr. Jared. Any discussions? All approved? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, board members, comments, correspondence. Again, starting down with Mr. Giard.
Nope.
For myself, I had the pleasure of 2 Fridays ago going around the middle school and delivering donuts and coffee with Superintendent Thompson for the morning to show appreciation of the teachers, subs, paras, and office staff, facilities, we have cafeteria, pretty much anybody that would like a donut that had 0 calories, and coffee. And I appreciated Mr. Thompson made a deal with just about every student in every room. If they came back and taught, he would buy them 2 donuts and coffee in the years to come. So, but that was really good.
And just so the staff at the central school don't feel left out, not to spoil the surprise, we are on our way at some point really soon.
Yes. So there's that. The second one was just tonight, was able to meet a couple parents that came in and visited to have some discussions with Mr. Thompson. Very highlighted, some good, just, I'd say, general discussions about concerns and questions, and just a little bit of sitting on the couch and talking about what's going on in the community. It was interesting. There was a comment or a question from one of the parents said, "Okay, I've asked you enough, and I've asked you to do enough. What can we as parents do?" It was a really good question. It was interesting. Got some dialogue. And I don't know if Ms. Thompson will join in at all, but for me, one thing that I mentioned was, one thing parents can do in my mind is, when there's standardized tests, when there's things going on at school, to reiterate how important that is for the school district, for the students, to take those seriously, as it is a reflection on the community, on the school. So there was that we read, and we had good discussion just about that topic. So I appreciated Ms. Thompson, putting this out before the school board meetings every time. Definitely enjoyed it. So that's all I got. Megan?
I don't have anything tonight.
Let's see, so I volunteered at the second vaccine clinic last week, which went really well, real smooth, and kids did awesome. And I also got to witness the HMS Student Council food and toy drive, Sunday. My days are all blending together. Sunday, and it was like the cutest thing I've ever seen. They were so excited. I think I drove in like 3 times, and the 3rd time I was just picking up my child, and I felt bad because they were all cheering, and they were all in like little outfits, and I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not dropping off this time. But they did a great job, and they were really in the spirit. So, and then just tomorrow, for any central school kids, the PTSA's Jingle Bell Shop is actually back and happening tomorrow, so that's pretty exciting. I'm glad to see it.
Nice. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Next is consent agenda with Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, under personnel report, there's no action. I did just want to make another plug, as I have in the past. We need substitute teachers. You know, we have staff that are out. Some are out because of COVID. Some are caring for children or family members who are in quarantine and self-isolation. It's having an impact on our schools and on our classrooms. As Mrs. Denola had indicated, it's all hands on deck. A number of our staff, in addition to their own teaching duties, are in classrooms helping to cover, but it's a strain. So I put that plug out there. Consider it almost community service that pays, right? Because if you really want to help out the schools, we really need people to step up and sign up to be substitute teachers. Under the superintendent's report, I just wanted to highlight, last Friday I had the opportunity to travel with the seventh graders to the Palace Theater to see a Christmas Carol. This was just such a special moment because these seventh graders, this is the first field trip that they've gone on since they were in fourth grade. It was such a tremendous day. I felt honored to be a part of this day, and I also appreciate all of the work. There was a lot of planning and coordination that our seventh grade teachers did to make this experience happen for our kids. They felt it was really important, and I really appreciate their efforts as well. Today was a great day. Our Hampstead leadership team, we had our first annual Yankee swap. And then also to celebrate the holiday season, we went over and we met with Jim Carey. He's the director of the St. Anne's Food Pantry. So our entire team of 11, we got a tour of the facility. And again, continued conversations about the partnership between the Hampstead School District and the food pantry, how we can provide community service opportunities for our students, and most importantly, how we can help feed our community. So there's some really great things that are coming, and I look forward to that continued partnership. I also wanted to highlight, as Mrs. Tomaselli has talked about in previous meetings, that we are using our ESSER funds to update the technology here in the HMS cafeteria, both for board meetings, but also for opportunities for students as well. I just wanted to report that the company that is set to do the work, and they are set to do the work, is experiencing some significant supply chain issues, and right now are giving us a timeline of February vacation for when that work would be done. I know that there was a hope that we'd have this for our public meeting and for deliberative session, and unfortunately, I would love to be able to deliver on that, but circumstances being what they are, we're going to have to wait until February break. I also wanted to let folks know that today, the New Hampshire Department of Education released the spring standardized test results. We call those the SAS test results. Those are for grades 3 through 8. They test in the spring. They test the areas of English language arts, math, and science. Across the board, both in the state of New Hampshire and nationally, test scores are down significantly, and we attribute that to the COVID-19 pandemic. For our Hampstead students, in English language arts, the district was at 61% proficiency, and the state average is 52, so we're significantly above for English language arts. For science, which tests grade 8, we had a proficiency of 53%, and the state average was 37, so we did quite well in science. And an area of great opportunity for the district is in mathematics. The district average was 34%, and the state average is 38%. So Hampstead has fallen below the state average with mathematics. Again, it's really important to know that when we receive these test results, it's one data point. And we have lots of conversations. Those conversations are not about how do we raise test scores. Those conversations are about how do we improve instruction. And again, we're a district of continuous improvement, so we are always looking at how we improve instruction, whether it's math, English language arts, science, social studies. But I say that knowing that we're going to disaggregate this data. We're going to look at it. We're going to compare it to other data sets that we have, including iReady, local assessments as well. And then it would be our intention at the January board meeting to come back here and let you know how we will respond to the data that we received that went public today. And I can tell you already that Mrs. Tomaselli and her team, they're all over this. On Friday, they met with the math coordinator for the Department of Education, a former employee of the Hampstead School District. And I can tell you we're already looking at intervention tools that we'll be rolling out and putting in place. I see this as a tremendous opportunity for us. As the board knows, we recently spent $100,000 to bring in a new math program. We've just begun the process of implementing that curriculum. So there's a lot of opportunity here and a ton of growth. And then lastly, I just wanted to, as we would do at every board meeting, just talk a little bit about our COVID-19 pandemic response. Since our last board meeting, we have seen an increase in the number of cases. This has led us to implement universal masking at this point in both schools. The masking protocol allows for that to happen, both when there's a cluster to extend for 14 days, and also at the discretion of the superintendent to extend for 5 school days. So we are constantly looking at the data, and our data would indicate that the rate of increase at the central school since universal masking was put in place has gone down significantly. So there's some good news there. Also, I do think it's important to note that, folks get the daily email, and those are numbers, of daily case counts. Every one of those numbers, that's a kid, or that's a teacher. And it's really important to remember that, and every one of them has a story. And that story leads us to make decisions about masking and our other protocols. When we hear, sometimes, a student attends a birthday party and might, contract COVID. They might contract it at school. We look at each and every one of these very carefully, and that helps to drive our decision. So with that being said, it is my intention to extend universal masking for 5 school days after the holiday break. That would be until Monday, January 10th. This is the right thing to do. We have seen a dramatic decrease in the rate of cases, as I indicated, when we went to universal masking. We also have 4 months of data now that would indicate that after a holiday, such as Halloween or Thanksgiving, our numbers increase. And also, you can't escape the news with the new variant. That's something that we definitely want to keep our eye on. So we will implement universal masking in the Hampstead School District for 5 school days, which would go to January 10th. And with that, the only other thing I wanted to highlight, as Erin had pointed out, on December 7th, we held the second vaccine clinic. I'm happy to report that well over 100 students were able to participate in that. It was exciting to get ahead of the curve. I know I've talked to a number of parents who didn't have the opportunity to participate in the clinic. It's really challenging to find an appointment for your child, so it's really a wonderful thing that we were able to offer that clinic. And with that said, I will entertain any questions that board members might have.
Just a couple of things going back to the testing and the deficiency. One of the concerns that I had was professional development. Sounds like you guys are all over that. And I appreciate that. We want to make sure that we're giving the teachers the tools to help and help. I don't want to say correct the number, but bring us back on track and get us where we're going. We knew that there was going to be some sort of a learning loss from the pandemic and from last year. I want to make sure that we're staying proactive with our team, with our teachers who do a phenomenal job, but give them the tools to make sure that they're giving that back to our kids. So thank you for jumping on that. The second thing is making sure or trying to find ways to get creative to include more of the students. We did have the summer sessions last year, which were great, and the parents and the students that attended those spoke very highly about it. But that might not be an option for all parents and all families. So getting creative and looking for options for other families, whether it's before school, after school. I know we use the enrichment classes or the activities after school for like robotics and this, that, and the next thing. Maybe we can offer some sort of, I don't want to use the word tutoring, but maybe we can use those same options to offer a class or a catch-up class or an extra class specific to math or in specific to getting kids caught up?
Yeah, absolutely. As I've said to a number of colleagues, this really is a great opportunity for us. You have new leadership. You have a brand-new curriculum program that you've brought in. You have very talented teachers who are constantly being reflective about their practice. So I know that some may look at the scores and be disappointed, but again, it's not about scores. It's about instruction. Teachers are constantly looking at that, and I think you're going to be you'll be pleasantly surprised in January when Nicole comes back and can outline for you some of the steps that we think are important steps for us to take to help improve instruction in general, but more specifically in math.
Do we have any sort of, or can we think about some sort of plan to put into place specifically for the students, say, 7th or 8th grade, right? So 8th graders, they're going to be, they've had this learning loss, and they're going to be going to Pinkerton or Central Catholic or wherever they're going. They're not going to be able to necessarily have this extra, extra work or whatever you want to call it, extra instruction. And I am a little concerned about that. I think math is probably one of the harder things to do remote, and that's showing clearly. But it's so foundational that it worries me that if some of these kids are they missed something, they're going to miss it as they keep going. So while I have concerns, obviously, for the younger students, I feel like there's a little bit of time for them to sort of get a program in place. And I worry about the ones that are moving on, that they won't get that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, in conversations that I've had with Nicole, and we've had a lot of conversations lately, and I don't want to steal too much of her thunder. I know she had a personal commitment tonight, couldn't be here, but looking at, let's do the root cause analysis. And again, the data just came out, so we're not 100% there yet. But looking at some of the most recent research around remediation and relearning, and how 45 minutes a week of remediation and relearning can really have an exponential impact on a child's performance and can move them to proficiency. So one of the things that we're looking at is, the possibility, there's a program called Strive for 45, and that's connected with iReady. It's something that we're looking at, where we would do 45 minutes a week of remediation. The challenge is finding 45 minutes in a master schedule that's already pretty crowded. But there are tools, and that's what we're looking at right now. What are some of the tools? It's important, we have a math specialist at the middle school. We have math PLCs. We need input from the individuals who are doing the instruction. But I definitely think this is something that we can come back to the board and say, here's the problem that we've identified. Here's what the research says. This is what our teachers say we need to do. Here's the plan we're going to execute, and we'll come back here at the end of the school year, and I think you'll see that progress.
Anything else, board members? All right, looking forward to that in January for sure. So, thank you.
Yeah, and just to add, this isn't just about math, right? The last, 19 months have been very challenging. And I think, it may look like a math score, but just in general, we constantly need to be looking at how we can improve instruction and outcomes for kids.
Yeah, I think it's just that, I hear you saying it's not just math. But when you look at those three numbers you gave us, where, we took a hit on the first two, but we did okay. Math, it's half of what it was before the pandemic.
Yep.
So, you're right, it's a big opportunity. This is why, the new leadership team is here. And these are scores that are based off of last spring. They're not scores of this fall or just the other day. They're from 6 months ago. I know you've been putting plans in place. I know the administration and teachers have been putting a plan in place. Just expectations, those scores are much higher, in the next term. So, but we again appreciate it for sure. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Anything else? All right. Anything under other business, old business? I don't think we have anything.
Mr. Smith, the only other item that we talked about is an adjustment to the February 8th school board meeting. That's
Oh.
the date of the deliberative session.
Yep, no, thank you for bringing that up. So, board members, on February 8th is our first school board meeting of February, and we have deliberative session 1 at the same time. So, looking to see, I don't know if everybody has their calendars on them, but looking to have the board meeting that following Tuesday is the recommendation of the 15th. So, it is I think it's a couple weeks before February vacation. So it's not during February vacation for us, but
That's fine.
It should be fine.
all right. I don't think we need to vote on that, though. Just, we'll post that, there'll be a change to the 15th.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome.
All right, and we are going to go into a non-public. So I'll be looking, should have got this out beforehand. Looking for a motion to go to non-public RSA 91A3 2 D, consideration of acquisition, sale, or lease of real or personal property, which, if discussed in public, would likely benefit a party or parties whose interests are adverse to those of the general community.
So moved.
All right,
Second.
Oh, yeah.
second, any discussion, anything? Okay. Melissa, do you mind taking a roll call?
Mr. Giard?
Yes.
Ms. Malcolm?
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Pellegrini?
Yes.
And Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. The time is 8:42.
Thank you. We do intend to come out of non-public with a vote, most likely, so those that want to hear it, stay tuned. All right, we have come out of non-public, and I'll be looking for a motion to seal the minutes.
I'll make the motion to seal the non-public meeting minutes, both for the reason that divulgence of the information would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of the public body itself, and the potential to render the proposed action ineffective.
All right, I'm looking for a second.
Second.
All right. Melissa, would you take the roll call?
Mr. Giard?
Yes.
Ms. Malcolm?
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Pellegrini?
Yes.
And Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
All right. And we are going to adjourn at 9:12. Thank you very much.